you check the children? Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is what
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil, Laird, and I'm here to do a review of the brand new release, A Quiet Place Day 1. Now, if you weren't aware, I am a huge creature movie fan. Creature features have always been my favorite. Every time I talk about the subgenres of horror, I always say creature features are my favorite. And A Quiet Place, the first one, was one of my favorite films to come out within the horror genre in many years at that point. I think it topped my list for that year. If not, it was number 2. But then A Quiet Place Part 2 came out. I really enjoyed that as well, though not as much as 1. And that leads us to A Quiet Place Day 1, which is a, origins tale. We got a little bit of the arrival of the aliens in A Quiet Place Part 2 for a little bit of scene, the early scene with John Krasinski and Emily Blunt and the family and stuff at the baseball game and the small town street where stuff went crazy. This is taking it up a level and making it an even bigger version of that, where this is showing us the outbreak, so to speak, in New York City. And we follow, our lead character in this one is Lupita Nyong'o, or excuse me, she's the actress that plays the main character in this, and she was stellar. I mean, we'll get to everyone, but I'll just start with my overall thoughts. I'm eager to talk about it, so I'm going a little out of order here, but yeah, my overall thoughts are this movie was very enjoyable. I think it's very worth seeing on the big screen. Do I think it's as good as the first 2 movies? I don't think it's as good as the first one, but it might be as enjoyable as the second one, just for different reasons. So I'll get into those as we go along. But yeah, my overall thoughts are this was a thrill ride that didn't have quite the emotional punch that the first one did, but at least the same emotional punch that the second one did. So I do like that, and I liked the story that we got here. Like, this is what I really enjoyed about the first 2 movies, is that it provided a setting that was rife with possibilities, right, for storytelling. I love the idea that they were like, okay, let's just take this creature apocalypse and make an entirely separate story. And I think they could continue to do that in perpetuity with this series. Just give me a different person's story when the aliens land every single movie. I don't care. Some people might think it's repetitive, but this proved that I think that would be enjoyable. I think they could do A Quiet Place First Contact and show maybe the very first alien to arrive and deal with a single family or a couple of families in a couple of houses in the woods or something like that. I think there's so much you could do with that, and that's why I liked this one, because this was a story that could kind of only be told in the way that it's told. And I'm going to be very cagey and very careful, because there's one aspect of this movie that was not advertised in the trailers, and it kind of changes your perspective on what the movie might be right at the beginning, because you find out something right at the beginning of the movie that you're like, oh, well, shit, that's okay, wasn't expecting that. And then the rest of the movie plays out, and it's all kind of in accordance with that. And it made for such an interesting story, and I loved that. The human story in this was so simple, very, very simple, not that deep, and yet very deep at the same time, which I loved, right? Usually I'll say something is puddle deep, but this seemed like a very simple story. Ultimately, Lupita's character's goal is a very simple goal, but the reasons as to why that's her goal, very, very deep. So I loved that. So yeah, overall, this movie was phenomenal, really. Again, not as good as 1, at least as good as 2, in my opinion. And very, very worth seeing in the theater. So let's break it down. The story is, obviously, like I said, about Lupita Nyong'o's character. She crosses paths with a few different people. Jaimin Hansu, you see in the trailers. I don't know if you actually see him. If you do, it's very brief, but Alex Wolff from Hereditary plays a role in this film, and he's almost unrecognizable were it not for his birthmark on his cheek, you know. Completely bearded up and looked awesome. Like, I was like, damn, this look works for him, you know. So it was cool seeing him. And then, of course, there's Joseph Quinn, who was Eddie from Stranger Things Season 4. So there's a lot of good to be had acting-wise in this. And while there's a lot of people in the movie, the cast, I would say, is very small. And you'll know what I mean when I say that. Like, there's a lot of different people that go by and interact, and there's different scenes with other characters that are almost extras. But as far as main characters that interact with each other, there's like 6 or 7, which is cool, right? It keeps things simple, it keeps things streamlined. And when you buy into Lupita's character's journey, it's really more engaging than you think it's going to be. And this is just straight up thriller the whole way. She has a goal, and she's trying to get to that goal and avoid the creatures. And shit goes wrong along the way, as you'd expect, of course, but it's done so well, so tense. And so, yeah, that's as much of the story as I want to say. She has a goal, she's trying to achieve that goal, and she meets a few people along the way. That's as much as I need to say. I think, considering I'm saying how good it is, and I'm not giving more than that. I don't want to spoil it for you. So that's the story. Acting wise, again, I touched on it. Lupita especially kills it, although the only thing is she looks like she's on the brink of crying for almost the entire movie. I'm not sure if she just has very glassy eyes in a lot of the scenes, like just normally, but she's always like just on the brink of tears, which is good acting, you know, especially in the tense situation she's in throughout the entire movie. That's the only thing that I noticed. She's a fantastic actor in this entire film, and I loved watching her journey, because there was a journey, right? Every character you want to see have an arc, and there's an arc, and it's amazing, and she's phenomenal. Joseph Quinn, phenomenal. Alex Wolff, phenomenal. Jaimin Hansu, phenomenal. Oh my God, Jaimin Hansu could have had a much bigger role, and I'm not ruining anything, trust me. He could have had a much bigger role, but for the time that he's on screen, he has one of the most impactful scenes in the whole movie. And like, I'm processing this, right? Because I just got home from watching it about a half an hour ago. So I'm processing everything, and I really am liking it more and more as I think about it. So yeah, acting, phenomenal. Production design, phenomenal, right? It's crumbling New York, and I bought into it every single step of the way. Loved it. The production design was fantastic. You know, all the sets, the matte paintings that I'm sure were used, you know, the cityscapes, everything felt so awesome and so accurate to the story they're telling, and I just loved it. It was a very well designed film. The budget on this was like $67 million, I believe is what I saw. I would not be surprised if this makes $300 million total at the box office, maybe even domestically. Like, this is a thrill ride. I'll be very interested to see, because the movies have been up and down, right? Fall Guy underperformed, a couple of other movies underperformed, and yet Bad Boys overperformed, right? The movies that people want to see, people are going to. My curiosity is this one of the movies they want to see? And I think they should. After seeing it, I think this is a movie they should want to see. So filmmaking, I want to touch on the filmmaking, because this was something that, you know, I in these reviews, a lot of times I only touch on something if it really stuck out to me. A lot of times the sound design or the music, especially the score, sometimes kind of goes unnoticed for me. But specifically in this movie, the sound design, the score, and the cinematography were 3 absolute standouts. The cinematography I want to talk about first, because from the very beginning, the way they shoot a scene where, you know, a bunch of people are watching a marionette show. I would say a puppet show, but it's not doing it justice. It's a marionette show. And the way the marionette show is shot, I was like, this is going to be a beautiful movie. Like, the way they just shot this one scene with the character performing with a marionette for an audience, it was fucking beautiful. Like, forgive my, you know, pardon my French, but man, I was like, this is going to be a beautiful movie. And that held true. I think that the cinematography was amazing through the whole thing. There was only one point where I got frustrated because it was two people sitting talking, and for whatever reason, one of the people, the camera when it was on him, was doing the fucking false shake. There's no action going on. They're just sitting talking. We don't need the false shake. There was a shake on her, but less so. So I think they were trying to show that, like, this person's a little more chaotic, because they're dealing with anxiety and stuff, whereas she's not quite as chaotic. So I'm guessing they were trying to use that to, again, assist with the storytelling. But to me, that one shot just bothered the hell out of me. But again, that's one shot in an entire film. The cinematography otherwise, I adored. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought it utilized the spaces beautifully. I thought it utilized, we've had 2 movies of seeing these creatures. And not only did they present the creatures wonderfully, but they altered the design a bit, where now they kind of look a little bit more like their skin is coral, almost like coral-like, right? Really rough and gross and nasty, and like if you touched it, it would cut you. In the first 2 movies, it felt very smooth to me, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this one, by comparison, they were very craggly, and I thought that assisted with the danger that it seemed like they posed. And there was one in particular that seemed like an oversized version, and I was like, they didn't really focus on its size except for in one particular shot when you're like, holy fuck, that thing's huge, So I really appreciated what the cinematography did, because that reveal there was cinematography. That was choosing to set the camera up in a particular way that it allowed for a reveal that was like, it was a similar reveal as the creature standing up basically standing up in the water where Emily Blunt is pulling the baby out of the crib, out of the little bassinet, right? That tense, like it's that sort of tension. So, cinematography was utilized beautifully. Sound design, of course, it's all about keeping quiet, this whole movie. So sound design plays a humongous factor in telling the story. Things that are happening, right? You want surround sound. This is one of the main reasons why you want to see it in a theater at least once. Because that surround sound theatrical experience, I'm sure there's some people in the audience who are like, man, I used to see my home theater system. I got a 70-inch TV and I got 7.1 surround sound. Man, it's better than any theater you can go to. All right, fine. Way to go, Jethro. Good for you. Jethro, I don't know why. But seriously, I do think that this is it's so stupid. I do think that this is worth going to the theater to go see. For the communal experience of the audience, because there were people screaming, there were people like there was one particular jump scare that was an annoying jump scare. In most movies it's like and you're like, God damn it, that was cheap as fuck. And yet after it happened, I heard numerous people going like catching their breath in the theater. So I mean, cheap, yes. Effective, also yes. But that's just one of the scares. Everything else, I don't feel like there was any other jump scares specifically except that one that was designed as a jump scare. The other ones that might be considered jump scares are really kind of more akin to the moment in the grain silo in the first one when the creature falls down behind the character. There's some similar moments to that. I wouldn't call that a jump scare. I would call that a well-crafted scare. So there's more of those than the jump scares in this, which is great, right? So sound design, and then I will also say, this movie, again, like the other Quiet Place movies, but this one felt like it had even less dialogue than the other ones, except maybe the first one. The first one had very little dialogue. I feel like the second one had more. There was a good amount of dialogue in this compared to those, but it was all well done dialogue, and when there wasn't dialogue, the score was doing... I would say the score is doing heavy lifting, but that has sort of a negative connotation, like the rest of the movie wasn't pulling its own weight. The score was just really dynamic and standout. So the score was really helping tell the story along the way during the quieter moments, of which there are a lot in a movie called A Quiet Place. So yeah, the score was really standout and phenomenal. Finally, the effects, right? The last thing to talk about are the effects. And I thought they were great. I mean, obviously, these creatures, we've established over the last couple of movies that when you see a lot of these creatures, it's usually CG, because it's them moving by really fast. There's a lot of that in this. And so you know very much that they're CG creatures, but when it's a lot more intimate encounters, the CG doesn't stand out quite as much because it's really dialed in. When there's a lot of quick moving creatures, you know, that move impossibly fast, that are fake creatures, you know, aliens that don't actually exist, your brain automatically knows that that's CG, right? But when they're up close, like when the creatures were up close interacting with characters, and I do mean like getting really close in a particular scene, that's all very well done, very tense, very awesome effects. It's when there's a lot of them moving that it feels very CG. But otherwise, the effects are phenomenal. Like, otherwise, they're really, really well done. They've really dialed in these creatures. They know exactly what they look like. And they've introduced variations on their designs a little bit in this. So I really appreciated the effects. So, I mean, guys, overall, very simply put, it's very worth your time. A Quiet Place Day 1, great time at the theater. Not as good as Part 1, probably as good as Part 2, just for different reasons. And I will say, again, without spoiling, I was very, very pleased with the ending. Because it was, like, I didn't know. When they introduced the thing at the beginning of the movie, it made it really hard to predict how it was going to go by the end of the movie. And when we got there, I was very pleased with the resolution at the very end. I was like, that's a pretty beautiful ending to this particular story. And that's not giving anything away. I'm just saying the resolution was a really well thought out, I think. And again, if I had a chance to talk spoilers, maybe I'll do spoiler talk with someone else or something. But I think that that this was it was really cool. It was really, I was very satisfied at the end. I didn't quite cry, but I know a couple of other people did, and I was very, very close. So there you go, guys. I think it's very worth your time. Go check out A Quiet Place Day 1. And let me know, come back here and let me know what your thoughts are afterwards. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you haven't, let me know if you're excited or not, or if this review changed your opinion on whether or not you wanted to see it. But thank you guys very much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird, and remember, stay scared. Oh, I just poked myself in the eye. Oh,